out to my boy Cats and Cubes. If you're into Rubik's Cubes, cats, or awesome music tracks, check him out on YouTube. I shout him out primarily because he requested a response to the Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson atrocity, which they had several years ago, where they got stuck on the definition of truth. Having watched the train smash too many times, my ideas on how to talk about this have changed drastically. So much so that I want to apologize to Cats and Cubes if this is nowhere near what he was asking for. Well, this one took me some time. And as I'm about to disagree with pretty much all of the great philosophers of our present and history, please feel free to correct me in the comments. I'm sure there will be ample opportunity to do so. But first, let's quickly get this issue between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson out of the way, before we attempt to provide an understanding of what truth may actually be. The two had planned on hitting a number of individual topics in this chat, but that all came to a crashing stop when they realized they were using different definitions of truth. This topic alone would be good enough reason to watch the video, as agonizing as it is. But the grace each man gives to the other, and the sheer power of will both used to not get overly frustrated, is an excellent example of how to have a disagreement. And now, on to the worst part of the video, which circled, at various speeds, for the better part of the conversation.
Knowing what is true got you all killed. Well, then that would be a truth that wouldn't be worth knowing, but it wouldn't make it less true, right? So if I...
Acute agony.
So before there was any understanding of the energy trapped in an atom, the energy was still trapped in the atom.
Acute agony. And so I would say, if it doesn't serve life, it's not true. Acute agony. The only final way of sorting out whether a scientific claim is sufficiently true is through Darwinian means. Because I think that the Darwinian process is the only way of adjudicating truth, acute agony. And it might be useful to talk about prime numbers, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're true in the way that I'm defining truth, which you already pointed out is associated with something like wisdom or goodness. Acute agony. The best you have are the truths that support the probability that you will continue with your existence and the existence of the species. And there is no truth outside that. Acute agony. And I would say, well, nefarious people can't have a truthful view of smallpox virus. It's not possible. Acute agony. Okay, well, then I would say that I don't think that facts are necessarily true. Acute agony.
Truths that led us down a path where we suffered unnecessarily or died weren't true.
Right. Acute agony.
I think you are committed to elevating the concept of truth, or what you imagine to be elevating it, into this kind of the moral stratosphere where it entails goodness.
That is precisely and exactly what I'm doing. There's no doubt about it.
First, I must point out that words are placeholders for concepts. When I say dog, you, hopefully, have a concept of dog in mind. The dog, however, that you are imagining is almost certainly different from the dog I am imagining. Perhaps you're thinking of a big dog, an old dog, a hairy dog, a dirty dog. If you can find a cheaper dog anywhere else, pet it. I, however, almost certainly have a very different particular concept of dog which I am imagining. Perhaps something more like a chihuahua. It is important for us to define our terms so that our concepts match the words that we are using, and therefore our concepts, when using those words, are at least very similar. This is important for honest communication.
A Darwinian conception of knowledge would be if we ever learned certain truths that got us all killed, well, then that would prove that these things weren't true or that this was an intellectual dead end.
Yeah, they weren't true enough. Acute agony.
This conception of truth, I think we have to nail down, because it just seems to me undeniable that there are facts, whether or not any of us, any existing population of human beings, are aware of those facts.
Acute agony.
there is a right way to synthesize the smallpox virus.
Acute agony.
You can't have a concept of truth that is subordinate to well-being.
Acute agony.
You're choosing, following Nietzsche here, you're choosing to use the word true. You're choosing to freight it with some moral concerns that will make it very difficult for people to understand what you mean.
Acute agony.
It seems to me that I can make statements about reality which neither of us can judge to be true. We just don't have the tools, or we're not going to take the time to do it. But we know there is a fact of the matter whether or not we can get the data in hand. So I could say, for instance, you have an even number of hairs on your body.
Acute agony.
Your concept of truth can't be hostage to these superficial changes in context.
Acute agony.
If DNA has any connection to heritability, right, we have good reason to believe that we are on unusually solid ground there, modulo all of the things we don't yet know about biology. If any of it's true, it's not true in this sense that you are describing Darwinian truth.
Acute agony.
Just entertain this example. So you have two labs that are studying the smallpox virus, and they both have the same conception of the smallpox virus in hand.
Acute agony. Frame it in such a way that...
Jordan, you have to grant one thing here. There's one piece that doesn't get moved here. You cannot move the piece that because you killed yourself, it's not true that she was having an affair. That move is not open to you, and yet you're acting like it is.
Acute agony. That whether or not it's of benefit trumps whether or not it's factually true.
Okay, but Jordan, now we've been doing this for 2 hours, and my only claim is that you have to be able to distinguish these variables.
Acute agony.
We could make it even worse for you than that. We could make the lab of good people fundamentally confused about the nature of smallpox, right? So they're good people. We need to be able to talk about their goodness because they have good intentions. But when you actually look at what they believe about smallpox, it's wrong. Wrong by what standard? That standard cannot be their goodness. It can't be the survival of the species. It has to do with the details of molecular biology.
Several times, Sam tries to show an issue with Jordan's definition of truth. He attempts many examples to show these issues. Although this was a good, honest attempt to change Jordan's definition, he was unsuccessful. At some stage, which never happened, Sam should have moved on. How could he possibly move on if the two men can't agree on what truth is? Well, don't be stuck on the word. Be stuck on the concept. Sam has an idea of what he thinks truth is. Jordan agrees with Sam, but adds a value or usefulness idea to his own understanding of what he thinks truth is. But it's the concepts where importance lies, not the words. Sam could have moved on from this topic, although a very important topic to dive into, by simply changing the word he used to truth A, and allowing Jordan to continue using the word truth. Yes, it may mean a clumsy exchange, but it would have allowed the conversation to move forward, and Sam would almost certainly have found other times to call Jordan's definition into question.
See, what you're doing is that you're taking a way of looking at the world, and you're making a micro example out of it, and you're saying that within the context of that micro example, truth is not malleable by situation. Acute agony. But I said already that you can set up micro examples where the claim that you're making is valid, but I'm not concerned with the micro examples. I'm concerned with the macro examples. Acute agony. Well, I already admitted, as far as I can tell, that you can make micro claims. Acute agony. It's not at all micro claims, because there's like the scientific acute agony. It's a framework of reference. It's not an aggregation of micro events, although it is also that. Acute agony. You know, you're criticizing my perspective, and you're doing it quite effectively, although I don't think fatally, because I think my distinction between the micro situation and the metaphysics stands. Acute agony. I think we've been going down this road for so long that I'm not exactly capable of them at the moment of making the micro example, macro example leap, acute agony. So, you're acting. That's the problem with these damn micro examples is that, and this is why I don't trust Josh Green's work. It's because you set up a narrative that's completely fictional and you act as if each of the subcomponents of the narrative are isolated truths that have no external context. Acute agony. That the example doesn't make sense. And this is the problem I have with these toy moral conundrums is that you get to define the context of the conundrum and leave out what you want. And that makes it easier to win the argument.
I should point out here that Sam and Jordan agree on truth, with the single exception that Jordan adds something which Sam does not. This value to people notion. Occam's razor alone would be enough to show Jordan incorrect. However, let's get more edgy and give another example. There is a traditional definition of racism that basically says prejudice, discrimination towards someone due to race. There is a newer definition of racism that some use, which agrees with this old definition, prejudice and discrimination towards someone due to race, but adds a requirement of power. Myself, not being associated with any dictionary, nor overly interested in trending parlance, don't actually hold any position on which may be the best definition. I would, however, point out that if both concepts exist, i.e. that traditional racism and traditional racism plus power both exist as concepts, then we're either going to run into problems with communication, or we need to change one of these words. Perhaps racism and racism 2020, or some such distinction. A further issue is that if the concept enclosed in traditional definitions of racism actually exists, then the concepts enclosed within racism 2020 already fall within that definition. As such, there would be no need of the new word racism 2020. Again, this is Occam's razor. Back to Jordan. Pointing out that Sam's examples are micro-examples is an absolute failure on Jordan's part at understanding argumentation or perhaps logic. Sam attempted to give examples where Jordan's definition does not work. If Jordan's definition does not work, he should consider changing his definition. Sam needed to point out examples of things we think are true, but have no value to us. If he can do this, Jordan's definition of truth is not good. He attempted this in many ways, but Jordan continually retreated to his micro-example excuse. Jordan, if I can find a dog that does not have long ears, you're not allowed to say all dogs have long ears. This is just how logic works. You may not turn around and say that Chihuahuas are just a micro-example, although they are quite small, and I am using them at... Never mind. Chihuahuas are an example that shows that saying all dogs have long ears is wrong. You can alter what you're saying, or you can try to show that Chihuahuas have long ears. What you cannot do is whine about a single black swan when you're arguing that all swans are white.
It's very difficult to doubt that you're in agony and how.
In the end, watching these two great thinkers trip and fall over the smallest of bumps was both like watching a tree fall on Bambi and a stark reminder of how stupid I can make myself look. If two such as these had problems, well, let's see how stupid I can make myself look. Now on to what I really wanted to do. Talk about the topic of truth. What is it? Oh, there are several ideas on truth that great thinkers have proposed over the years. Let's take a very quick, very simplistic look at them. First showing what they are, and then showing that they are all insufficient theories for defining truth. Finally, using them all to come up with an improved understanding of truth. Correspondence theory. We say things are true if they correspond to reality. So, it is true to say there is a rock the size of New York on Mars, only if there is actually a rock the size of New York on Mars. The problem here is that, although reality is objective, our understanding of reality is necessarily subjective. So, if I believe that leprechauns guard gold by rainbows, then it is true that they do because my belief corresponds to my perceived reality. Coherence theory. We say things are true if they are part of a coherent system or group of beliefs. So it is true to say that my neighbor has a new cat because I know I have a neighbor, I know she likes cats, I know cats are real, and I know people have them as pets. The problem here is that just because a system or group of beliefs is coherent does not necessarily mean it is correct. There were lots of logical and consistent models of the atom, but they, being different from each other, cannot all be true. Pragmatic theory. What is true is what is useful, is resulting from inquiry, and has held up to scrutiny. So it is true to say that gravity is a force because it helps us know about the world, has come from testing, and has yet to be shown incorrect. The problem here is that utility is irrelevant to truth. Sorry, Jordan. Either there was or was not a red flower that went extinct before the dinosaurs died off. If such a flower existed, it has no actual use to us now, yet it still existed. In the future, we may find that it in some way directed our evolution, or not. Yet it still existed. Also, truth need not be the result of inquiry. If this were the case, we would not need schools. We would only need libraries and labs. Finally, it does not matter if something has held up to various attacks on it. There was a time when no one could fly airplanes. The statement, men can't fly, had held up for centuries to scrutiny, and yet there came a time when we learned. Semantic truth. Tarski's semantic truth should, in my opinion, be looked at as more of a method or a calculus to compare and contrast claims that we already hold as true. It very closely resembles, or perhaps is, math. However, he says that the sentence, snow is white, is true if and only if snow is in fact snow, white is in fact white, and the snow we're talking about is in fact white. It is a shame to leave this here. I personally find this method not only fascinating, but also fun, useful, and educational. Redundancy theory. To say that dogs are animals is true is identical to saying dogs are animals. So there's no reason to say it is true that grasshoppers can hop, because it is identical to saying grasshoppers can hop. The problem here is that it takes the whole notion of truth out. There's no need for truth. It's only a redundant way of speaking. Again, the sentence is, grasshoppers can hop, and it is true that grasshoppers can hop, are identical in that they both express my belief in grasshoppers being able to hop. Adding the true here holds no value. Sorry for the oversimplifications, but luckily, we're finally at the point of the video. Capital T truth is the actual state of affairs in the cosmos. We can see this in correspondence theory. We could call this reality, the objective reality that we seem to find ourselves in, made up of physical laws, planets, and Starbucks employees who refuse to call a large cup a large cup. I can only think of one thing we can say we know exists in this capital T truth set. Definitional truths. These things which are true based solely on the definitions we have ascribed to them. Just as in the semantic theory. 1 + 1 = 2 is true because of our understanding of 1 plus equals and 2. There is no such thing as a married bachelor because a bachelor is definitionally unmarried. However, I don't 100% know of anything else we can put in this capital T truth group. I'm not sure how we can expect to know if we've ever obtained this capital T truth or not. We can see from past examples we're certainly not infallible in this regard. Chameleons, once thought to change color in order to camouflage, are now thought to do this in order to communicate and regulate temperature. Columbus didn't actually discover America. Leif Erikson is now largely believed to have been the first European to have done this. There have been various models of the atom, which we now see as having been incorrect, etc. There are lots of things humans have thought true, which have later been shown to be wrong or not wholly true. Let us first draw a line between what the actual truths which exist in the cosmos are and the small t truth which we think we have. As we cannot be sure that capital T truth equals small t truth, we're in danger of creating an equivocation fallacy unless we're very clear. Let's start with some simple definitions. Opinion. A personal or subjective position I hold. For example, chocolate ice cream is the best. Belief. A position I hold which I think is objectively true. For example, I believe the Earth is not the only planet which has life in the universe. Knowledge. A belief I hold with a very high degree of confidence. For example, there is a force close to the surface of the Earth which has a value of 9.8 meters per second squared in the direction of the center of the Earth. Small t truth. The beliefs I hold which I think are equal to capital T truth. This is where the issue is. As we cannot know if our ideas of small t truth match up with the capital T truth, what is the real difference between small t truth and knowledge? This may be what redundancy theory tries to point out. Functionally, there isn't one. We could be correct or incorrect about what we deem as knowledge, just as we could be correct or incorrect about whether the truth we think we have is the actual truth. So let's look at things in a potentially more useful way. Capital T truth is objective. There exists some reality that we all share. Small t truth is subjective. We all have slightly, or often drastically, different ideas about what we think is true. It seems we can never be sure how closely our small t truth resembles capital T truth. And this is where we would use the cohesion theory. I want my small t truth to match the capital T truth. You want your small t truth to match the capital T truth. Neither you nor I have access to capital T truth, but we do have access to each other. I go along with your ideas on whatever, only until they conflict with my ideas on that topic. When they do conflict, I want to find out which idea, mine or yours, is closer to capital T truth. As should you, because we're both interested in being correct. So what the hell is truth, and where does this leave us? Truth, as I have said, means two different things. Number one, capital T truth is the actual state of affairs in the cosmos, also known as reality. This is objective. Two, small t truth. This is the collection of beliefs we hold with high confidence, which we each have, although different in some areas, and both think correspond to objective reality. But this is subjective. Great. So now what? Well, as capital T truth is really synonymous with reality, we could just toss the word and use reality. In reality, 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's reality. As for small t truth, this is really synonymous with our claimed personal knowledge, the things we hold at a high confidence level. So we could toss the word and just use knowledge. Let's clean this all up now. We all have opinions. They're the way we feel about things. We all have beliefs, those things we think are correct. Some of those beliefs we have a high confidence in. We call that our knowledge. Our jobs as truth seekers is to contrast our knowledge with the knowledge of others in an attempt to make our differing beliefs come closer to reality. It's a continual exercise in trying to understand our world. We get ever closer when we're able to come to some agreement, after finding some disagreement. But how can we possibly agree after disagreeing if we do not know how to disagree well? And this is why I will continue to make videos. I'm only interested in having my knowledge reflect reality. If you are as well, let's take this trip together. Again, shout out to my boy Cats and Cubes. Pal, thanks for the push, and I hope my clumsiness did not force me over the edge.